Hey, what's up guys? My name is Sal and this is another expedition log. On today's episode, we'll be visiting a mall that has been sitting vacant for many years. And until recently, it's just been used by mall walkers. But now the lights have been turned out and it's not a suitable place for mall walkers anymore. This episode is the penultimate ExLog from my 2018 Ohio tour, and also for Phase 3 of the Expedition Log series. So start getting psyched for Phase 4, which is coming soon. I hope you've all been keeping safe during the COVID-19 pandemic, and that if you can, you've been staying home. Social distancing has started to show benefits, with the curve beginning to flatten in some cities, so keep staying inside, and I'll keep producing weekly content for you. Let's work together to beat this thing so we can all get back to living our lives normally. While I was at this mall, it was super creepy, and it was pitch black inside with only a few flickering lights. But if you look carefully, you'll see some vintage gems, including the inside of the leaky old cinema. So since we can't go out to malls physically right now, come take a walk with me through the Tiffin Mall in Tiffin, Ohio. But first, a word from our sponsor, the 1985 Filipino cinematic masterpiece, Blood Debts. The movie's absolutely nuts, and its ending is priceless. Enjoy.
Superstar Film Company presents a film that will show the world what action really is. Blood Debts. If that's the case, why'd he go on killing? He any psychiatric record?
None, Bill.
Blood Debts.
No, don't shoot him.
Blood Debts, the story of a one-man war against criminals that turned the streets into a jungle and men into beasts. Blood Debts, an explosive movie where love is hotter than bullets, brutal, bloody, violent, with bone-chilling suspense. Blood Debts.
They have no rights.
They got your son, Dave.
What? Oh, God, not my son.
You see? I told you to pull those two out of there a long time ago. You never listened to me, and now it's too late.
Blood Debts. Starring Richard Harrison, with Mike Monty, Dick Israel, James Gaines, Ann Jackson, and Ann Milhench. Blood Debts. When a man becomes the judge, the jury, and the executioner, there is one hell of a lot of blood debts to pay. Blood Debts.
In the spring of 1978, plans were announced by Cleveland-based developers Diversified Limited to build a new mall in Tiffin, Ohio. Then on Tuesday, January 9th, 1979, the Seneca County Commissioners passed a resolution to issue $9 million in tax-free bonds to developers Diversified. And so the developers broke ground on Monday, July 9th. I had driven to Ohio from Baltimore earlier that morning, and it was a 2-hour drive west of Cleveland out here, so it was about 8 hours total of driving to get here. And I had no clue if the mall was open or not, so it was a huge shot in the dark. But luck prevailed, and as the Mexican restaurant was open, and for some reason its door into the mall was also open, and there was a crack between the gate and the mall concourse. Unfortunately, all the lights were off in the mall, but I did have my torch. So let's descend into the darkness. The Tiffin Mall had its grand opening and ribbon cutting ceremony at 8:30 in the morning on Wednesday, September 17, 1980, inside of their brand new 55,552 square foot Kmart. The rest of the mall would open an hour later at 9:30 a.m., along with a 34,364 square foot JCPenney serving as the second anchor. Guests were entertained throughout the day by a ragtime piano and banjo duet, along with a puppet show during the weekend. The mall had a diverse mix of inline tenants, which included Noble Shoes, Joann Fabrics, Rite Aid Drugs, Zale Jewelers, Baskin-Robbins, Carousel Snack Bar, Musicland, House of Cards, and Kinney Shoes. In the months following the grand opening, more stores would join the lineup, along with a cozy 4-screen cinema and a Ponderosa steakhouse. The Mexican restaurant where I got into the mall is where the Ponderosa used to be. Throughout the 1990s, just like many other small suburban malls, the Tiffin Mall would valiantly serve its modest community. More tenants would open, including a Heilig Myers by 1994, and your more typical dead mall boutiques such as a GNC in 1997, and in 1998 we saw Claire's and Bath & Body Works open. The nascent mall coasted through the 90s and into the millennium, naive but emboldened by 2 decades of success. However, just 30 minutes to the west of Tiffin is the Findlay Village Mall, ironically located on Tiffin Avenue. This DeBartolo gem was built back in 1962, but it received a massive renovation and expansion in 1990, and it would take most of the traffic away from the Tiffin Mall over the years. This competition was not good for Tiffin Mall. Tenants began leaving the mall steadily in the early aughts, namely the Ponderosa Steakhouse, which was gone by 2001. By 2002, Kmart filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, becoming the largest retailer in American history until that point to do so. Because of their problematic finances, the Tiffin Mall location was one of the many to have shuttered, leaving only the JCPenney as the sole anchor in the Tiffin Mall. This loss, coupled with the allure of Findlay Village, would be the beginning of the end for Tiffin. If any of you have any idea what this storefront used to be, please let me know in the comments. The woodwork and the weird drop-down part of the ceiling, I've never seen that before. So if you know what this place was, let me know down below. There are aspects of the mall that do remain untouched from when it was first opened back in 1980. Down in the JCPenney courtyard, this is where most of the original aesthetic lies. The JCPenney is original, and as you'll see in a second, we'll be going into a Regis hair salon. That also remains untouched as it was back when the mall opened. But a little bit later in the video, we'll be heading inside the abandoned inline 4-screen movie theater. And there's some pretty interesting visual characteristics in there. There's like this painting on the back wall and a pretty vintage looking palette that they chose to paint the walls. So make sure you stick around for that. That's pretty creepy in there. But overall, 2002 was one hell of a year. About 1 year after the horrific events of 9/11, George W. Bush created the Department of Homeland Security. We found water ice on the planet Mars when the Mars Odyssey used its incredible onboard instruments to transmit the newly discovered information across 130 million miles of nothing. But more importantly, the first season of American Idol came to a close in September of 2002 when Kelly Clarkson won the contest. A month after Mademoiselle Clarkson was discovered as the greatest singer in the history of the world, over in Vietnam there was a massive fire that broke out at the International Trade Center in Ho Chi Minh City. 60 people died at the mall and over 120 were injured, and 2 welders were arrested, and they concluded that the sparks from their equipment was what caused the blaze. They spent about 5 years in prison for the crimes. In theaters, we had a few awesome premieres. The Scorsese masterpiece, Gangs of New York, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. Minority Report with Tom Cruise, which I actually enjoyed quite a bit. We had Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, The Pianist, Men in Black 2, and the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, which I feel was criminally underrated. And I'm really hoping that somehow Tobey's version of Spider-Man is integrated into the MCU with the upcoming multiverse saga. Could you imagine all of the different Spider-Men from all of the different universes combined in one movie? How crazy would that be? Just don't get me started on that. The Kmart was demolished in late 2002, leaving a gaping hole on the mall directory, but an opportunity to turn things around. Developers Diversified wanted to take full advantage of the empty space, and they sought inspiration from the growing love for cinema. Hollywood movies were getting bigger with massive budgets. Hype around them was becoming much more serious, and the cinema was clearly beginning to dominate popular culture in a way that it's never done before. So Developers Diversified wanted to take full advantage of this momentum, and so they constructed a brand new movie theater to replace the deteriorating inline 4-screen cinema, which was first leased out to Regal Cinema, then leased by Marquee Cinemas. The new 8-screen Marquee Cinemas had a grand opening and first screening in June of 2004. The cinema brought some much-needed traffic to the mall, but due to the financial issues of the Marquee Cinemas chain, they had to shut down after just 18 months. The theater complex was quickly bought up by Plano, Texas-based Cinemark USA Incorporated, who had the place reopened on March 31st, 2006. The cinema brought the mall some much-needed success moving into the 2010s, but after 32 years of ownership, Developers Diversified sold the mall. The partnership, formed in November 2011, was called Tiffin Mall Realty and was a subsidiary of the Cohan Retail Investment Group based out of Great Neck, New York. In 2012, the mall was appraised for $4.9 million, and it was holding steady at a fairly healthy 75% occupancy, which is pretty good for a suburban mall. The deal closed on February 8th, 2012, and the mall was sold for a shockingly low $755,000 to the Mike Cohan subsidiary. Now, for it to sell at nearly 65% of the appraised value is incredible, and frankly, it just catches me off guard. The mall had the only enclosed cinema in Seneca County, a brand new cinema at that, and it had a modest occupancy with a very healthy appraisal, but the numbers don't lie, and Cohan got them all for cheap, which is exactly what we can expect from Cohan. Their game is to buy up malls when the price is low, barely keep them open, to avoid payments at all costs, and then unload the mall once it's time to make a profit. Their business practices are right up there with Moonbeam. They're both greasy, and they're just in it to make a couple of bucks, the only way they know how, to profit off of killing malls. So we're about to get into the original 4-screen cinema that opened with the mall. I don't believe that it's a true representation of what the cinema looked like back when it opened, because I did see a few things here and there that hinted at a renovation for the movie theater, but it couldn't have been recent because this place has some pretty old stuff. You'll see some of the drapery in one of the screening rooms that looks like it's from 1970. And you'll also see a painting on the back wall of one of the screening rooms, and something like that is not modern. No movie theater does that anymore. But I really can't help but think about our current events right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. It does seem that the curve is flattening in a lot of places, and that's amazing. And we have to keep working on that with social distancing, but I can't help imagining a worst case scenario. That's not going to happen here, but a pandemic like this could take out most of the world and leave us in total ruin. A place like this is pretty reminiscent of what it might look like after man, after society falls. And that's part of the allure of traveling through these places, because it's such a far-fetched idea for society to fall. And it's just a fantasy to imagine that. People that do urbex, people that explore derelict and abandoned places, that's part of what draws us to these places. So when we see a place like this, a movie theater, that's completely deteriorated, it's fascinating to imagine this in a world other than just a shady real estate company that doesn't know how to take care of them all. This is just bad upkeep, bad maintenance, in an otherwise pretty decently maintained mall. I digress. My point is, we can imagine what a world might look like if society were to fall by just watching some of these videos. This is a glimpse into what it might look like. And again, that's not going to happen. But if it did, this is probably what it would look like. Throughout Kohan's tenure at the Tiffin Mall, occupancy would fall sharply, and the mall would fade into obscurity. But they're very good at what they do, and in 2016 they sold the mall to Toledo, Texas-based Key Hotel and Property Management for $2.2 million. Of course Kohan did it to make a profit, and of course the mall died in the process. By the time the new owners took control of the mall, the only tenants were a real estate agency, a dance studio, a church, the Mexican restaurant, and a tattoo parlor. Despite claims that the new owners were working towards delivering a retail experience to the community rather than running the mall simply for profit, no new businesses were signed by the time I got there, and as you can see, it's pitch black and vacant. Most recently, I found that a Planet Fitness was to be the Tiffin Mall's newest tenant, so it's clear that the owners aren't trying to demolish the property, so they want to keep it around, which is why they brought Planet Fitness in. So I don't know how the property's doing. I haven't been back there because it's an 8-hour drive for me, and it's really hard to find updates on this place. If any of you live near this mall, and if it's not too far away, pay it a visit, and let me know down in the comments how it's doing. I'd love to find out. Now in this super weird alternate timeline we've fallen into in 2020, amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, which is forcing the majority of the world to quarantine in their homes, dead malls are in even more danger as they were before. With no way to get crews inside for maintenance, and with tenants not able to work and therefore not able to pay rent for their stores, we might see a lot of the endangered, vacant malls around the world die off in record numbers. On the other hand, most of the dead malls have already been failing to pay their rent for years, which is why they're dead in the first place, so we might not see any changes at all. Whether or not the nearly vacant and endangered malls will reopen once the world goes back to business, that's the big question. Take Forest Fair, for instance, in Cincinnati. It's held up entirely by 2 anchors and 1 inline tenant. Will Arcade Legacy remain open in a time of heightened germ awareness? We'll see. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, please make sure you're following me on all of my various social media, but most of my interaction happens on the Dead Malls of Discord server. So links to all of my social media and the Discord server are in the description below, along with links to all of the members of the Dead Malls of Discord family seal. So make sure you're subscribed to all of them because they're all really fantastic channels. So be sure to join the Discord and follow me on all of my social media, which would go a huge way in showing me that you guys like this content. And just the interaction that I get with you guys pushes me to keep creating while locked down, unable to leave my house. I'd like to thank all of you for watching this video, and I can assure you that while we're all quarantined, I'll keep producing weekly content. Thanks especially to my patrons and everyone that engages with me and my content, showing me support by dropping a like and ringing the bell. That means the world to me. So I'll see you all soon for ExLog 55, where we finish off the 2018 Ohio tour and we bring Phase 3 to a close. Until then, take care everybody, and have a fantastic day.